this arm comes out, and the arm comes out, and it just started firing immediately. And I'm like, oh my God. And all you see and all you hear is... The Cadillac rolled up right alongside where this Dodge truck is. That Dodge truck representing the BMW, that is where the arm came out and fired into the car.
Tupac's bodyguard finally confesses what he saw that night. For decades, the full truth of Tupac Shakur's murder has been buried in silence, until now his own bodyguard finally steps forward to reveal what really happened that fateful night. Frank Alexander was in the convoy, witnessing bullets tear through the car as chaos erupted on the Vegas Strip, a moment no one survived unscathed. The events he describes not only expose the shooters and their plan, but also pull back the curtain on the dangerous world Tupac navigated just hours before his life was violently cut short.
The Cadillac rolled up, shot into the car, and took off and made a right on Cobra right here. There was no traffic right here. These were open lanes.
Main part, September 7th, 1996. The Las Vegas Strip blazed with neon lights, but nothing could prepare the world for what was about to unfold. Frank Alexander, a former Marine and professional bodyguard, sat in his vehicle just moments behind a black BMW carrying the biggest name in rap music. What he witnessed that night would haunt him for the rest of his life. For 25 years, Frank Alexander carried a secret. He was there. He saw everything. And just days before his own death, he finally broke his silence.
And all you see is the smoke. And I just like, oh my God. And I opened up the door and I jumped out and I ran up to the back of the BMW. As I got up to the back of the BMW, as soon as I got to the trunk, I'm thinking, they're dead. There's absolutely no way in the world that these two guys are alive.
In the Vegas Strip at 11:15 p.m., a caravan of vehicles rolling through the intersection of Flamingo Road and Koval Lane. Tupac Shakur, the 25-year-old rap phenomenon who had sold over 75 million albums worldwide, stood through the sunroof of a BMW 750, his white suit gleaming under the streetlights. He was on top of the world. He had just watched Mike Tyson destroy Bruce Seldon in 109 seconds. The night was young and Club 662 was waiting.
The car takes off and does a U-turn. I run back to the car, hop in the car, and I busted a U-turn also. And here we are now going back to the Strip, going back because I'm assuming, thinking he's going to a hospital, trying to get Tupac to cops or ambulance, emergency services, whatever, would be on the Strip.
Then in the span of 13 seconds, everything changed forever. A white Cadillac rolled up alongside the passenger side of Tupac's BMW. Frank Alexander's eyes locked onto the vehicle immediately. Something felt wrong. The Cadillac had been idling outside Club 662 for nearly 5 minutes earlier that evening. Now it was back, stalking its prey through the glittering chaos of the Vegas Strip.
Okay, the only thing he can do is read our mind. All right, Pac spoke a lot about his death, and he spoke a lot on how he was gonna die.
The rear window descended, a hand emerged, then came the gunfire. 4 bullets tore through Tupac's body, 1 grazed Suge Knight's head. The BMW lurched forward as Suge tried to escape, crashing into the center divider. Smoke hung in the air. People were screaming. The white Cadillac vanished into the chaos of the Strip like a ghost disappearing into fog.
When he came back on the Las Vegas Boulevard, he was going south. He got to Harmon, he took a left turn. By that time, the car broke down in this area right here. Actually right there, just before that light.
Frank Alexander jumped from his vehicle and sprinted toward the BMW. His training as a Marine kicked in, but his weapon was locked inside his car. Death Row had implemented strict security protocols that night. Only 3 bodyguards were authorized to carry firearms, and Frank wasn't one of them. The irony would devastate him for years. He was supposed to protect Tupac, but the very rules designed for safety had stripped him of his ability to respond.
Car after he was shot, he took his hands, after we laid him on the ground, took him out of the car. He was laying there, right? He was like almost unconscious, but he was still moving, and he took his hands and he did just like this.
What Frank saw when he reached that BMW would never leave him. Tupac was conscious, his hands moving in gestures that showed both courage and awareness. Blood soaked his white suit. The man who had survived poverty, a shooting in Times Square 2 years earlier, multiple legal battles, and the brutal environment of Death Row Records was now fighting for his life on a Las Vegas street. Frank had been positioned in the convoy behind Tupac's vehicle. Some called it luck. Others called him a guardian angel. That positioning likely saved his life, but it also meant he couldn't prevent what happened. The distance between his car and Tupac's BMW was measured in feet, but in those critical seconds, it might as well have been miles.
I can't breathe. You couldn't breathe because that lung, you couldn't get air, and that was the last thing I ever heard him say.
Frank Alexander recognized the occupants of that white Cadillac immediately. He had seen them before. All three men were members of the Southside Crips, a notorious gang that controlled significant territory in Compton. Terrence Brown, known as Bubble Up, was behind the wheel. DeAndre Smith sat in the left rear passenger seat, and in the right rear seat, the position that aligned perfectly with Tupac's BMW, sat Orlando Anderson. The positioning was deliberate, calculated with military precision.
You said the shots came from the back. Big Dre, Orlando. Who shot Tupac?
The keeper for the code of the streets. It just came from the backseat, bro.
These weren't random gangsters looking for fame. They had waited outside Club 662 for 5 minutes. They knew exactly which vehicle Tupac would be in. They knew the route. They understood the security setup. This was calculated. This was premeditated revenge dressed up as street justice. Frank alerted his team the moment he spotted the Cadillac, but events moved too fast. The shooting happened within seconds of the vehicle pulling alongside. There was no time to react, no time to intervene, no time to change history. The wheels of fate were already in motion, grinding toward their inevitable conclusion.
Or he would call me in his office, or he came on the set of Gridlock when we were on the set, and he would come to me and he would say, "Look here, Frank, you're doing a really good job with Pac. We talk a lot about you. Your name come up a lot. He really like you."
The presence of these specific individuals told Frank everything he needed to know about motive. This wasn't some elaborate conspiracy involving record labels or rival rappers. This was street justice, pure and simple. The code of the streets demanded blood for blood, humiliation for humiliation. Hours earlier, inside the MGM Grand Lobby, Tupac and his entourage had attacked Orlando Anderson. The assault was brutal and public. Security cameras captured everything. The reason? Anderson had allegedly been involved in robbing a Death Row Records associate weeks earlier. The chain medallion stolen belonged to the Death Row family, and in that world, such disrespect demanded immediate response.
She was like, "They're shook. And then he was like, "Come on, come go with me. Come go with us. We going to 662.
And bros, Tupac.
Frank watched the entire confrontation unfold. He understood the street code that governed these situations. You get beaten in public, you don't walk away. You gather your crew. You retaliate. Pride demands it. The streets demand it. Honor, twisted as it might be, demands it. Orlando Anderson took his beating at the MGM. Then he made phone calls. Within hours, he had assembled his response team. The white Cadillac became a weapon. The Vegas Strip became a battlefield. The cycle of violence that had consumed South Central Los Angeles was now playing out under the bright lights of Sin City.
In meetings that we had, and we were told not to carry out weapons that day and that night, we were told only 3 of us could carry weapons and to leave them in our car.
Frank emphasized something crucial in his later confessions. Absolute certainty about the shooter's identity remained elusive. Orlando Anderson was the primary suspect based on positioning and motive, but Anderson himself was killed in an unrelated gang shootout in 1998 before any charges could be filed. The truth died with him on a Compton street corner. What Frank knew for certain was the chain of events. Confrontation at MGM. Assembly of Southside Crips. Premeditated wait outside Club 662. Calculated approach on the Strip. Execution-style shooting. This was retaliation, following a script written by street codes older than anyone in those vehicles.
Every fight after Tyson fight, the after party was at Club 662. In this particular time when I got to Vegas the night before September 6th, on September 7th.
For years, Frank Alexander remained silent. The weight of that night crushed him. He faced accusations from multiple directions. Some blamed him for being in the back seat with Tupac. Others questioned why his weapon was locked away. The conspiracy theories multiplied, each one more outlandish than the last. Government plots, record label assassinations, Illuminati connections. The theories grew more elaborate while the simple truth remained hidden. Days before his own death, Frank finally spoke. He detailed the events leading to the shooting, the miscommunication within the security team, the weapons protocols that prevented him from carrying that night. He demolished the conspiracy theories with simple facts and street logic that anyone who understood that world could verify.
By him, this attorney, that we couldn't carry our guns and this and that, blah, 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 to the club that night. And it was three of us, like Michael Moore was one of them, myself and Al Gittins, who is still with Snoop to this day, said, no, we carrying our guns. We're gonna, we worked it out to where we were gonna carry our guns, but we were gonna have to leave them in our car.
His message was clear. The truth wasn't complicated. No government plots, no record label hits, just revenge, pride, and gang retaliation. The same cycle that had claimed thousands of lives in Los Angeles was now playing out on the Vegas Strip, taking one of the most influential artists of a generation. Frank published a book titled Got Your Back to clear his name and honor Tupac's memory. He wanted the world to understand what really happened, to see beyond the myths and legends that had grown around that September night like weeds consuming a garden.
Orlando Anderson, who's in the right rear passenger, reaches forward and says, "Give me that motherfucker," leans over DeAndre Smith out the back window of the Cadillac and began shooting rapidly into the BMW.
Emergency responders pulled Tupac from the BMW. He remained partially conscious, his hands still moving, still fighting. Frank watched helplessly as the ambulance screamed toward University Medical Center, its sirens wailing through the Vegas night. Surgeons performed multiple emergency operations. They removed Tupac's right lung. They induced a coma to give his body a fighting chance. For 6 days, the world held its breath, praying for a miracle that would never come.
How my gun ended up in my car and not on my person that day. And I didn't have time to get my gun because my gun was on the other side of the valet where I had parked earlier that day. And when Pac and Suge was ready to go, they were ready to go.
Frank couldn't access his weapon because it was locked in his vehicle, following death row's security protocols. The separation of vehicles meant he was positioned too far back to intervene before the shooting. These details would torment him forever, replaying in his mind like a horror film on an endless loop. Meanwhile, Frank faced immediate threats. Former colleagues turned on him. Accusations flew. Death row's brutal culture of loyalty and paranoia consumed everything. Frank became a target himself, blamed for failing to prevent the impossible, for being human in a world that demanded superhuman perfection. The Vegas Strip was supposed to be a celebration. Mike Tyson was fighting Bruce Seldon. Tupac would perform at Club 662. September 6th through 7th, 1996, should have been just another weekend in the chaotic, brilliant life of Tupac Shakur.
I was getting in the car with Pac and Suge. I literally had my hand on the back door, opening the back door. And Pac stopped me and turned and said, "Hey, Frank, here's the keys to Kadada's car. You go drive with the Outlaws so you could be our designated driver and drive us back after we leave the club tonight, from drinking." And I was like, all right. So, that was...
Tupac dressed in his white suit and gold jewelry that night. He refused the bulletproof vest offered to him. He traveled with Suge Knight, Frank, and his entourage. His girlfriend Kadada and cousin stayed at the hotel for safety, a decision that probably saved their lives. Club 662's lobby was pandemonium. Fans screaming, media everywhere, strangers pushing forward, desperate for a glimpse of the legend. Frank remained vigilant, scanning faces, watching hands, looking for threats. But the real danger was already in motion, cruising the strip in a white Cadillac, waiting for the perfect moment. Frank Alexander's confession gave the world an inside perspective on Tupac's last day. He humanized the legend, revealing a man caught between death row records, the streets, the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, and systemic failures that allowed violence to flourish unchecked.
Was a witness who was in Las Vegas, part of the death row entourage, who was present during the shooting of Tupac Shakur, who said that Knight stated he knew who the shooters were and that they were Southside Crips.
Tupac Shakur died on September 13, 1996 at 4:03 p.m. He was 25 years old. His legacy includes a Guinness World Record as the top-selling rap artist, the Tupac Amaru Shakur Foundation, established in 1997 to support creative students, and even a UC Berkeley course studying his poetry and history. Frank Alexander wanted people to remember one thing: Tupac was human, a myth. His life and death were shaped by real forces: loyalty, survival, pride, and a culture that glorified violence while mourning its victims. He was a son, a friend, an artist whose potential was cut short by bullets fired in anger. The truth Frank carried for 25 years was simpler and more tragic than any conspiracy theory. Sometimes the most shocking revelations are the ones that confirm what the streets already knew. Violence begets violence. Revenge demands revenge. And in that endless cycle, genius burns bright and dies young.